Welcome to the graduation ceremony for the 6th cohort of RLI, the Rabbinic Leadership Initiative Fellowship. As I look out at this beloved group of extraordinary rabbis who have become like family to the Hartman Institute over the past 3 years, I'm thinking of a blessing we recite each day. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, hanoten liyayef koach. Praised are you, ruler of the universe, who gives strength to the weary. It can be exhausting to be a rabbi, physically, mentally, and spiritually. There is a fatigue that comes from the daily attempt to make the best decisions, to say the wisest and most inspiring words, to comment on the most pressing issues of the day with expertise and moral conviction, and to be a source of unending comfort and love for people who are often in pain. Where can rabbis find the source of strength to sustain their tireless service to the Jewish people? RLI 6, you came together in the summer of 2016, seeking renewed energy to help transform your rabbinic leadership. You entered this Beit Midrash with an open and generous spirit of curiosity, humility, and commitment to learn and grow in new ways from our faculty and from one another. You have shared in your reflections that the RLI experience has strengthened you with newfound confidence. You are better able to act as courageous leaders to address the challenges facing the Jewish people today, empowered with deeper insights, new Torah, stronger tools for navigating the complexity of Jewish life, and new ways to engage in a meaningful relationship with Israel. Your passion, enthusiasm, and wisdom gave koach to our faculty who felt privileged to learn and dialogue with you. You have also given koach to this institute through your very generous class gift to make sure that other rabbis can draw strength from this program in the future. Most of all, you were determined to create a community of koach, a chevra of trust and friendship to support and bolster one another. You created a space in which everyone in RLI 6 could be themselves, their full selves, with all your strengths and weaknesses, successes and failures, dreams and fears. In this loving and accepting space of the RLI 6 chevra, you emboldened one another and lifted one another to greater heights. On this graduation evening, I want to bless you with words from the prophet Isaiah. In Isaiah 40, we read the original source for the daily blessing, Noten liyayef koach. And immediately after these words, the Bible continues, those who trust in the Lord shall renew their strength. Yarutzu v'lo yiga'u, yelchu v'lo yi'afu. They will run and not grow weary. They will walk and not grow tired. It is a strange verse. Normally, we would say you will walk and not grow tired, and then after building up your stamina, you will run and not grow weary. Why does it start with running, then walking? I think this verse captures a deep truth for rabbinic leadership. It is sometimes easier to run than to walk. It is sometimes easier to muster the energy to write a Yom Kippur sermon or to officiate at the funeral for a parent of a board member or to respond to a communal crisis than it is to wake up each and every morning to the daily work of the rabbinate. RLI 6, I pray that you will feel strengthened by the lifelong partners you now have to walk with you on your rabbinic path. I pray that you will continue to draw strength from this Beit Midrash and return year after year to reinvigorate your rabbinates with new Torah and new ideas. And I pray that you will continue to draw comfort and power from this network of trusted confidants and true friends. May God bless you each and every day to serve the Jewish people with joyful energy, hope, and with koach. Yasher koach. It is my privilege now to call on two members of the RLI 6 community to share their reflections on their RLI experience, David Shuck and Amy Wakatz.
I want to just begin by thanking Danielle and Yehuda and Lauren and Marlene for taking such good care of us over the past 3 years. During the past 4 summers and 3 winters, I've experienced so many different feelings in this Beit Midrash. I felt inspired and challenged and profound gratitude, just to name a few. But to be honest, at times I also felt small. As thrilling as it is to follow scholars as they thread ancient and contemporary texts together to reveal pearls of unexpected chidushim, it occasionally left me wondering about my own ability to turn our texts over and over to uncover the everything that is in them. Last summer, Dr. Christine Hayes concluded a riveting shiur, and something magical happened that I'd never seen in a Beit Midrash. People leapt to their feet and gave her a standing ovation. And I just sat here, right around here, that was the front. And I couldn't move as tears streamed down my face. I had just watched a masterful teacher share a Torah that was tender and fierce, that was inspired, really. And it moved me to tears. And soon enough, that feeling, which was so precious, turned into a gnawing thought. When is the last time, David, that you gave a shiur with as much insight and creativity and generosity and preparation and intellectual ingenuity as the one you just witnessed? You see, when you work in the inspiration business, which we all do, this is the shadow side. That question is the shadow side of being inspired by someone else. I think about my own Torah, and a menacing voice asks, "Is that all you've got, kid?" And during these past 3 years, my private spiritual work has been to check my ego, to avoid turning the gift of being stirred by someone's brilliance into the pain of hearing that exasperating internal question. And through all of this, I have learned to allow that feeling of smallness become my teacher. Along with the dazzling faculty here at Hartman, I have learned from that smallness. And here's what I learned in good Hartman Torah. There is a paradox in feeling small, because that feeling sometimes is the very feeling that leads to an expansiveness in spiritual depth and religious meaning. On the surface, the Hartman Institute is anything but small. In fact, next year, if you haven't heard, this Beit Midrash will expand. I've heard that 400 benches will be added. Some people say 700 benches. a joke I could never make in my shul. But either way, more rabbis will have access to Hartman Torah. Hartman Torah. It's a term that sounded a bit like an overshoot when I started here, as if Moshe had been replaced. But I've come to understand that that term is critically important. It is actually a political critique. The Torah that emanates from this institute is a multivocal, unafraid of challenge. It is in conversation with contemporary ideas and realities. It's grounded in Masorah, and it is compassionate and loving. And unfortunately, today, the word Torah alone, without the qualifier Hartman, does not signal these virtues. In the institutional Jewish world, the word Torah alone has come to imply a tradition that is univocal, that is closed and judgmental and not moving and afraid of new ideas and nuance. So for the past 3 years, our teachers have been whispering in our ears, saying, "You can change all of this. We trust you. We're willing to invest in your ability to transform the American Jewish landscape by teaching the type of Torah you have learned here." But the unspoken challenge is, of course, to do this, we need deep wells of courage. We'll need to stand up to boards, to funders and stakeholders who feel threatened by any change to the status quo, who are afraid of a Torah that doesn't privilege the concepts and the boundaries that divide the world into the predictable categories that they're used to. And for us to do this, for us to really do this, we have to leave this Beit Midrash with more than source sheets and inspiration and new material. We need one another's public support. Our responsibility as RLI graduates is to become a community of rabbis who give expression to pluralism by publicly and unapologetically acting in solidarity with one another. That's never happened in the middle of me speaking. This isn't going to happen in a whisper in an email saying, "I know you're going through a hard time, I'm with you." And even when it may be unpopular with our communities, we're going to have to stand up with people, sometimes with people with whom we disagree ideologically. And that is the hard work of leadership that the Mechon is trusting us to do. An act of solidarity, it's actually small. It doesn't require money or ingenuity or communal support or institutional development, but the expansion of a Torah of chesed, of love, rests on the smallness of that one solitary act over and over. We learned a text with Melila in the winter in the Zohar, which describes surprisingly, we learned a text in the Zohar with Melila. And it described the origins of the Tikkun Leil Shavuot, with its characteristic dash of brilliance and creativity. On Erev Shavuot, the night before Revelation was reenacted as God's Shekhinah would stand under the chuppah of Sinai with her groom. Rabbi Shimon and his colleagues stayed up all night with the bride. Why? Lismoach ima betikuneha shehi nitkenet. To delight with her in her tikuneha, her adornment in which she is arrayed. All night they would string together a necklace for her, a necklace made of pearls of Torah, of chidushim. From Torah to Nevi'im, from Nevi'im to Ktuvim, from Ktuvim to Midrashic renderings of verses to the mysteries of wisdom. Elu heim tikuneha v'tachshiteha. These drashot are her adornments and finery. And the creative imagery is really stunning. We stay up all night stringing a necklace of Divrei Torah that we invent ourselves, and we create a necklace to adorn the Shekhinah as she steps under the chuppah to marry. But it's the word tikuneha that is the genius of the text, because it can both mean to adorn and, of course, to heal. In this sense, we adorn the Shekhinah with a necklace of chidushim, not simply because it amplifies the beauty of her Torah, but because she is healed. The Shekhinah is healed by learning something new from us. We have to have the audacity before the wedding to say directly to her, I have a new idea, and I want to share it with you. An idea that you didn't reveal to me. You didn't even see this before, but I discovered it myself through intellectual rigor and through the work of my heart. And when we place that chidush on her necklace, she will be healed and ready to stand under the chuppah. Without this annual creativity, the Shekhinah will slowly shrivel from a life of predictability. Each year, all it takes is something small. One small idea, a connection between psukim, a new way of understanding the Sambation River, or mapping Professor Frankfurt's essay on bullshit onto Sanhedrin 110a. That one small idea is large enough to heal the Shekhinah. And in my reading, I want to imagine that there's enough ambiguity in the text to suggest that Eluheim tikunea v'tachshiteha refers not simply to the chidushim, but to the friends themselves. We adorn one another by studying one another. When I learn you and you learn me, healing is inevitable. This is the smallness that enlarges our lives. Over these last 3 years, it has always been the check-in when we start, and it has been our reflection when we end that has taught me the most. Not the shiurim and not the chavrutot. The smallness of a 4-minute sharing. Tell me about your life. That has had the largest impact on me. The dignity and the integrity with which each one of us struggles to live our lives while giving so much to so many people who tug at our ankles and demand that we mend their lives. That has been the source of the greatest inspiration to me. We have shared joy over these years. We've endured many private challenges. And yes, at times we have been deep in despair. But I feel heartened by my new necklace with each one of you on it. And so I'll conclude with a final thought. In my busy week of supervising staff and officiating at funerals and weddings, many more funerals than weddings, and counseling people and fundraising and building an institution, it's the smallest, most simple thing that I do that perhaps is the most important. Every Wednesday morning, I read a novel to a blind elderly congregant. It's not changing the world. I'm not adding 400 benches to the Beit Midrash. But the smallness of that act has taught me so much. We've been reading Marilyn Robinson's book, Gilead. And Reverend John Ames, who is a pastor who's dying, he's a fictional character, but kind of a mentor to me, wrote the following in his letter to his young son. If you ever wonder what you've done in your life, and everyone does wonder sooner or later. You have been God's grace to me, a miracle, something more than a miracle. You may not remember me very well. It may seem to you to be no great thing to have been the good child of an old man in a shabby little town that you will no doubt leave behind. If only I had the words to tell you. If only I had the words to tell you. To my friends in RLI who've been staying up all night, uncovering chidushim during these past 3 years. If you ever hear that exasperating internal voice asking you, is that all you've got? I want you to know that you're each something more than a miracle. And in so many small ways, I'm certain that you've been God's grace to the people you serve, even if they don't know how to tell you. And to be God's grace to someone, that could never be a small thing. These weeks we've spent together have been some of the finest of my life, and you're some of the loveliest people I have ever known. And as we respond to the whispered appeal of our Hartman teachers, who believe that we can impact the American Jewish landscape, may we find the courage to support one another in the holy work of making Hartman Torah just Torah, a Torah of love and compassion, as the small gestures and the chidushim bring healing to the Shekhinah, to our people, and to each one of us. Shabbat Shalom.
David Jasher Koch, that was really, really beautiful. Erev Tov, Danielle, Yehuda, Lauren, Marlene, to the wonderful faculty at Machon Hartman, to my colleagues from RLI, to all who are studying in the Machon, thank you for this honor. It means so much to me, more than I can actually say. Before I begin, I want to acknowledge and thank Harold Grinspoon and Diane Trotterman, who made it possible for me to attend Hartman. And I am so grateful to the leadership of Temple Bethel, who understood that intense professional development was essential for me for so many reasons. I'm going to take us through a journey. This seems timely, given that the Parshiot at this time of year describe our ancestors' journey through the desert. As you all know, as individuals and as rabbis, our lives are filled with a mix of emotions and experiences, trials and triumphs, never segregated from one another, but more typically, simultaneously lived. When I enrolled in RLI, I was in the midst of a particularly difficult time, personally and professionally. I'm the rabbi of a wonderful congregation in Springfield, Massachusetts. Like most of New England and like so many conservative congregations, my community faces serious demographic challenges. Once a congregation of about 900 families, we are now about half the size. I spend a good amount of my rabbinic leadership guiding my lay leaders to prepare for an uncertain future. I'll not lie, it's depressing to watch a community shrink. Consider what it means to have witnessed and counseled as we closed a Jewish day school, merged synagogues, watched a Federation annual campaign steadily decrease, and perhaps hardest of all, watched serious young Jewish families move from the area because they are looking for a more intense Jewish life. Some leaders in the community want to give up. They say there's nothing in Springfield anymore. Others run off to Florida, where they claim to have found utopia. It's my role, and at times struggle, to show my leadership that while our future is not our past, we have capacity to create a rich and meaningful Jewish life by doing as Jews have done throughout the ages: assessed, adapt, accommodated as circumstances shift. And yet it remains hard to be an inspiring and visionary leader at this moment in my community's story. While I'm no Moses, I know that my community needs my leadership. Now, actually, more than ever. But the emotional toll has its effect. And our community is shrinking in no small part because we are a community that is aging. 2/3 of my membership is over the age of 70. And thus I officiate at a lot of funerals, roughly 40 to 50 a year. And while many of the individuals I bury have lived long and full lives, others have not been so blessed. Regardless of young or old, as all the rabbis in this room know, officiating at a funeral is emotionally draining. The sacred work demands strength. To capture the story of a person is never easy, whether I've known the individual or whether there's someone near and dear to my heart. Layer into the work and experience the challenge of working with the deceased children and grandchildren, many of whom are not engaged Jewishly and often do not even know the words of the Kaddish. The emotional toll has its effect. Now, lest it appear to you as if the Jewish world of Springfield has disappeared and is swallowing me up from within, I want to actually clarify something. I truly believe that being a rabbi is a great blessing. I have the chance every day to write, to think, to speak, to lead services, to sing, to comfort people, to teach, to read, to study, to travel, to meet with other community leaders, to work with great people. And it's all part of my work. They pay me for it. People like me. They respect me. I'm part of their sacred stories. I never cease to marvel at my good fortune. I love my work. But I have to say, it's hard, and it's sometimes lonely work. And the emotional toll has its effect. And then there's my own story. The last 5 years have been very hard for me personally. My mother died in November 2014, and the end of her life was difficult as she lost so much of her independence. A few months after I stopped saying Kaddish for my mother, my husband and I decided that after 24 years of marriage, it was time for a divorce. And while our ending the marriage was amicable, divorce is never easy on anyone in the family tree, but particularly on the immediate family. And just weeks after we told our children, my oldest brother called to tell me he had been diagnosed with liver cancer. And if that weren't enough, my very dear friends and family from Springfield, Cantor Morton Shames and his beloved wife, Franny, died just a few months later, only a few months apart. Franny and Morty were my local Springfield family. I love them both very much. As a successful cantor for over 50 years, Morty knew my congregation and my world. He knew the load I carried. He counseled me, he held me, he loved me, he criticized me. He and his Franny were my closest friends in Springfield. We celebrated Shabbatot and holidays together. I can't describe just how alone I felt after Morty and then Franny died, how each loss chipped away at my spirit. It was a dark and difficult time for me. I felt so alone. I felt so scared, and I worried about my future. And while my community rallied for me as best they could, there's only so much they could do for me. It was at this time that Lauren and I spoke about my enrolling in RLI. I couldn't say exactly why, but I knew I had to find the time, and I am so glad that I did. Because in life, we have so many things happen, and they're not all scheduled to come spaced out evenly. They often show up congested together. Making time for RLI gave me a remarkable gift that opened my soul and my heart when around me and within me were unease and uncertainty. I loved coming to Jerusalem for a month in the summer. I loved renting an apartment and knowing that I would be here. I loved only having to take care of myself and not having to worry about putting dinner on the table or washing and folding laundry for my family. I loved knowing that I would walk the streets of Jerusalem and spend multiple Shabbatot here in this wonderful country. I loved knowing that when I left in July, I'd be returning in February. I loved coming to Israel and not leading a group. I loved coming to Israel for myself, my soul, my mind, my heart. I loved having an opportunity in a very safe place to explore the complexity of this society. I love that my ideas about Israel changed and evolved in these past few years, and my understanding of life here is now richer and more nuanced. For this alone, I could say Dayenu, but there's so much more. I loved a routine that included lectures and chavruta. Most of the time, our chavruta was focused. Okay, most of the time. But I know that when our conversations meandered, they were often helpful in so many ways. I loved the chance to study throughout the year. I loved listening to so many smart colleagues, although often that was actually very intimidating. I loved knowing that Mondays would be for me to learn. Maybe what I learned I would use in teaching or preaching, but maybe not. Maybe the learning was just to fill me up. For this alone, I could say Dayenu. But there's more. By participating in RLI, I became immersed in a rabbinic community, a community that could hold me and see me like no other community. When I buried my brother and marked his shloshim, with you, it was healing. Colleagues whom I didn't know so well held me, understood me, offered to go to the cemetery here in Jerusalem where David is buried. Yes, of course, my community back home supported me, but at home I'm a leader. I'm Rabbi Katz, and my role is different. I can't explain it exactly, but I trust that you, as peers, understand. And thus the RLI community nurtured and held me differently. And if all that was not enough, one of my children has faced some serious mental health issues in the past few years. You can imagine the challenging mothering moments I have faced. And you all stood by me. You reminded me that I'm a good mother and that I have what it takes to hold my child as she finds her voice and her footing. Sometimes it was a phone call, other times a text. You understood when I was distracted during chavruta or simply could not be physically or emotionally present. When this child came to read Torah for Women of the Wall, so many of you who don't feel called to Women of the Wall woke up and came to hear her and support us. Do you have any idea what that meant to me? My community in Springfield is near and dear to me as my physical and professional home. But RLI has become a home to me of spiritual and educational uplift and safety, a beacon of light during times of darkened skies. Today is the 13th of Tammuz. The moon rises big and bright, growing bigger and brighter for 2 more days. I love paying attention to the waxing and waning of the moon. I love to do this in large part because it is through Judaism that I learned to notice the phases of the moon. I'm a city girl. I hail from Chicago. In my childhood home, it is inconceivable that we would talk about the phases of the moon. And few were the nights I actually paid attention to the moon, let alone its cycles. But when I became immersed in Jewish life, I learned about the waxing and the waning, the calendrical significance of the moon, and I realized how our ancestors linked time and its passage to the moon, which surely stood by them as they journeyed through the wilderness into the promised land. Rav Soloveitchik wrote the following about Rosh Chodesh. Rosh Chodesh symbolizes the belief in the imminent consolation, in the renewal from decay, in the emergence of shining light out of the flames of decline, of resurrection from death. At times, the Jewish people are rolling in their blood and struggling through superhuman torment. He continues and writes, man sits and is humiliated by a cruel reality. A somber, gloomy future instills in him many fears. Rosh Chodesh comes and comforts him and wipes the tears from his face. Be calm. Salvation is near. The incompleteness of the historical reality will be overcome, just as the incompleteness of the moon is overcome. True, just yesterday the moon disappeared, Soloveitchik continues, and a night of darkness surrounded everything. But behold, the pleasant and modest moon is again reappearing somewhere in the distance. Rosh Chodesh whispers the news of the redemption and salvation from destruction, hope and comfort from mourning. I've always loved this piece, but I would like to offer a minor amendment. Soloveitchik says that salvation will happen, redemption will come. He implies that it will happen naturally, just as it is natural for the moon to wax and to wane. He suggests that Rosh Chodesh should give us hope that redemption and salvation will come for the Jewish people. Naturally, it will happen. But whether we are speaking about the Jewish people or our own individual stories, I would suggest that we do not go from darkness to light without being proactive, without helping ourselves. Salvation does not just happen. Redemption does not find us. I have come through this dark time in my professional and personal life, in large part because I took care of myself in many ways. And one of the most important things I did was to find time to join Cohort 6 of the Rabbinic Leadership Institute. In so doing, I not only learned Torah, and I not only learned Torah that could help me in my profession and in my community, but I also learned Torah through compassion, commitment, conviviality, and companionship, which has given me room to grow and expand my soul. To my dear colleagues, we have an important role to play in making Judaism, our texts and our traditions, meaningful and relevant to our communities. For the past 3 years, we have all brought ourselves, our stories, our challenges, our struggles, our aspirations, our strivings, our dreams, our sorrows, and our successes. Machon Hartman reminds me, and hopefully reminds you, that we are not alone. We as leaders in our respective wildernesses are honored to serve Am Yisrael and have felt privileged to study Torah and deepen our connection to Eretz Yisrael and to create a sacred community. I pray that the power of this experience holds us for years to come. I'm here for you, and I actually know that you are here for me. Danielle, Yehuda, Lauren, Marlene, to all of the faculty and staff at the Machon, I am quite sure that the other voices of RLI offer our deepest gratitude for the chance to be a part of this sacred community. Thank you for the learning. Thank you for the healing. Thank you for the opportunity to regain my strength and my light. May all of us go from strength to strength as we conclude this extraordinary experience together, marching along in our people's journey.
Yasher Koach to David and to Amy. It's my privilege to call up Stephanie Kramer now, who's going to present the class gift.
So I have 180 seconds to convey gratitude on behalf of 27 rabbis for 4 years of magnificent Torah. This should be a piece of cake. Honestly, there's not enough time and there aren't adequate words to sufficiently thank you and honor you. Thankfully, we just had a siyum where you got to hear more words of our love and thanks. Bitty, thank you for your dedication and curricular oversight for this fabulously crafted program. Thank you for everything. Shimon, you have been more than a colleague and a friend. You are a mentor and a Hevruta extraordinaire. Thank you. Marlene, where's Marlene? Come on up. Marlene, thank you for each and every detail. Convening a gaggle of rabbis that scatter like cats is a tall order, and you do it gracefully. We would like to present you with just a very small token of our appreciation for all of your hard work and attention to detail, taking care of all of our specific needs. Hopefully, after we vacate for this summer, you can kick up your feet for just a second while you start preparing for the new RLI Cohort's winter retreat. Thank you so much for all you've done. Thank you. Lauren, I could spend hours praising you, but then you'd kill me for going over the time limit. And honestly, there are no words for how incredible you are. You are a scholar, a mensch, a rabbi, a friend, and a leader. You are fierce and demure all at the same time. Your honesty is incredible, and you have taught us so very much by just being you. Our cohort experience of RLI would not have been what it was without your artist's hands crafting and specifically choosing each rabbi for this cohort. We have you to thank for all of our new friends. It's your delicate nature that puts everyone at ease and yet keeps a cohort of rabbis on a schedule moving forward. Never easy. You have the kindest way of commanding a room, and when days are long and it gets really hot, your smile only widens. You're a rabbi to rabbis, and we cannot thank you enough. We have a token of our gratitude with a few of your favorite things just for you. A moment in Miami to relax, rejuvenate on sushi, and something so that you never forget us. We're so very, very thankful. I'll make you stand in just a minute. Yehuda and Danielle, what can we say? The two of you have developed an institute that is unlike any other. It's been a place to study, a a place of deep exploration, transformation, and renewal. This program has been so rejuvenating for us, a place specifically for rabbis to come and to have their cup refilled, a cutting-edge institute that provided us with Torah to grapple with, to digest, and to transmit back home to our communities. There's no way for us to thank you both enough for your time, your teaching, and your Torah. For each of you, we got tokens of appreciation, something for Yehuda's feet and something for Yehuda's foodie palate. And Danielle, something for your new home to remember us by. Thank you both for all that you've done for us. But our class felt that the best way to really say thank you was to give the same gift of Torah that we received from this institute. We wanted to help give others the gift of Hartman RLI, a gift for which every single one of us is so very, very profoundly grateful. So together, with 100% participation, which I don't think ever happens in a campaign, but it really happened in this one, all 27 of us came together to donate over $31,000 in scholarship for the institution. Thank you all so much for these profound years of study. My life, as well as all of our lives, were enriched because of you, because of what you all have built, and because of the Torah that fills these beautiful walls. Thank you so much.
Hi. This is beautiful. I don't know what a graduation is supposed to look like, but this is over the top. I get to speak to you not as RLI 6. I get to speak to you now as Hartman Rabbinic Fellows. And I want to speak to you in a language that I shared with you that I love very, very much, and that is, I love Chazara. I want to go over a Torah that I learned with you. As I told many of you, when I was 14, I came home from school deeply upset because my teacher had just told us that we weren't allowed to serve in the army, that we were part of God's army, and that as yeshiva students, our job was to learn Torah and to leave fighting to others. We had just made Aliyah a year beforehand. And that wasn't the Israel that I had come to love. That was not the Israel that I felt responsible for. As many of you know, I actually like the word encumbered. I get excited by it. I feel really, yes, I'm an encumbered being. Wow, today's a good day. And school ended at 8 o'clock at night, and I took bus number 18 from Beit Vagan and passed by the shuk as it was closing down. And I come home at about 8:30, 8:45, and I said, Abba, they told me that I'm not supposed to fight to defend Israel, that that's not my job. And my Abba said to me, Daniel, come, let's sit down. I have something I want to teach you. And he opens up the Gemara in Masechet Brachot, and he says, here, let's learn. He says, Daniel, you remember Chet HaEgel? I said, yes, Abba, I remember. Do you remember that God said, Lech red, ki shichetamcha? That God said, go down because the people have sinned? I said, I remember. Well, he said, that's not the way our tradition reads the story. Our tradition says as following, my lech red What does it mean, go down? God says to Moshe, Klum natati lecha gdula, ela bishvil ha'am. V'achshav shechat'u otcha lama li. I have given you greatness only for the sake of our people. And now that they have sinned, what need do I have of thee? And my Abba taught me, there is no Torah if the Jewish people aren't with you. There is no Torah and there is no value to your own personal enrichment unless that Torah is embedded in the deepest commitment to love, be responsible, and yes, be encumbered by your people. I was raised by my Abba to love you before you were even here. I was raised by him to love rabbis because you are the model of people who have no notion of Torah that is disconnected from the Jewish people. The essence of who you are and the reason why this institution loves you more than any other group that enters our doors is honored to be able to serve you is because you know that Torah is only for the sake of the Jewish people, and you give your lives to that. You don't talk about it, you actually live it day in and day out. But I want to leave you with a responsibility. See, today, our problem is not individuals who want to be on the mountain alone. We don't have a Moshe or an individual who says, I just leave me alone. Nobody wants to be on the mountain alone. The problem is we want to create on a mountain our own private communities. Like this, we're willing to walk away from each other. Like this, we're willing to say, oh, you voted for that person? Oh, you have this position about Judea, Samaria, occupation, Israel. You have this position about immigrants, gender, Me Too. You are this. You're friends with this person. You sat with that person on a podium. You did this. The list is long. And the tests are constant, and we're sitting there and we're watching. And we're waiting to see, when are you going to fail? And the minute you fail, I could walk away with profound self-righteousness. Not to be by myself, but to be in the midst of my community, which reaffirms every single certainty that I have. Klum natati lachem gedula, ela bishvil ha'am has a new Torah today. It's not about separating from people. It's about making sure that in your people, all of us are there. And I know how hard it is. And you're right, we have to support each other. If there is a Hartman Torah, is that we don't leave anybody outside. And it doesn't matter how angry you are. And it doesn't matter how upset you are. And it doesn't matter how much you think they don't get it. Nobody's left outside. When you have 14.5 million people, for you now to be Hartman Rabbinic Fellows, I don't want you to love all of them. You can't. But I want you to be encumbered by every single one of them. Alu v'hatzlichu.
It is our honor now to call up the members of the RLI 6 cohort to come up together on the bima and to receive your diplomas. So we'll come up as a whole class and we'll take a class picture, and then Yehuda will close our program with closing words. So Josh Brody, Aaron Brusso, Daniel Katzenberg, Bruce Dahlin, Mayor Feldman, Mark Fishman, Yona Hain, Sarah Ronsky, Lila Kajdan, Steve Kane, Yosef Kanevsky, Amy Walkatz, Stephanie Kramer, Michael Adam Latz, Daniel Levin, Bruce Lustig, Elizabeth Richmond, Douglas Segal, Saralea Schley, David Shuck, Michael Schwab, Rona Shapiro, Brent Spodik, Michael Weinberg, and Eliana Yalkut. Mazel tov to the class 6 of RLI.
I was like, we go lower. Hey. Okay. Thank you. Take it. Take you. Oh.
We're getting shot. We're supposed to figure it out later. Come on, guys, you could have negative 45 seconds. Take it. Yes. I got a lot of stuff to say. Do you have a time machine?
I say it fast.
You do sermon voice. This is your moment.
Sermon voice.
Thanks, man. I don't know. I just figured.
Three summers ago, 2016, I shared the following text with members of RLI Cohort. Was it 5? There you go. Maybe you remember, maybe you don't. Still, as you know from the Hartman Beit Midrash, we have a bunch of favorite ones, and you go back to them. Rabbi Nechunya ben Akana haya mitpalel b'knisato lebeit hamidrash u'v'tziato tefillah ktsara. Rabbi Nechunya ben Akana would pray a short prayer upon entering and upon leaving the Beit Midrash. Amrulo, ma makom letefillah zu. What are you doing? This is a Beit Midrash, not a Beit Tefillah. The answer, he said, is Amar lehem b'knisati ani mitpalel shelo yera'eh davar takala al yadai. On my way in, I pray that I not do anything wrong, right? Not say something doesn't happen because of what I've said and done. Uviyatziyati ani notein hoda'ah al chelki. And when I leave, I give gratitude for my portion. The Gemara goes on to explain in a further elaboration of the prayer that what Nechunya ben Hakanya was scared of on his way into the Beit Midrash was being ashamed. Something would happen that he would do wrong and he would be ashamed, or he would shame Torah. And something on the way out, the notion of chelki is the sense that he was accountable, he was responsible, he was an owner. Yesterday with RLI, I gave my last shiur. It was a short one. It was a sweet one. I think it was my favorite, not because it was the deepest or the richest, but because I got to spend all that time together with you. And in retrospect, this little Gemara that we read yesterday from Ta'anit about this the tragedy of the end of Bayit Rishon, where the Pirchei Kahuna stood up on the roof of the temple and said, since we didn't succeed at being faithful custodians, Gizbarin Ne'emanin, they throw the keys of the temple up to God, and like a hand comes out and catches them. In retrospect, in reading that text in relationship to this, I noticed the difference between the Beit HaMikdash and the Beit Midrash. In that text, we learn that the Beit HaMikdash is fundamentally a place of tenancy. You are a short-term tenant. When the Kohanim go up on the roof to throw up the keys, what they're basically saying is, we are only owners of this place to the extent that we do what we are supposed to do. And if not, if we get kicked out, we give it back. We are mere tenants and renters. What Nechunya Akana's prayer suggests, however, is that the Beit Midrash is not a tenancy. It's not a place of rent. It's a place that you own. When you enter into a Beit Midrash, you realize that Torah of a Beit Midrash, the Torah of Chazal, is one of ownership and responsibility. And I can't think of any part of Hartman Torah more profound than this idea of the Beit Midrash. At the core of the Hartman Beit Midrash is the idea that to be a rabbi, to be a student, to be a Jew living at any time in Jewish history is to be responsible for the interpretive tradition. When you are in the Beit Midrash, you own it. You should be nervous on the way in that you fail to do everything you're supposed to do, because with ownership also comes responsibility. You can't walk out of the Beit Midrash and hand the keys to somebody else. You're in the Beit Midrash, you own it. That means you own the Torah that takes place in it, and you are responsible for the world that gets repaired and changed based on what you take from it. Nechemia ben Akana enters with a sense of shame, and he leaves with pride, which is opposite to the story of the Churban. The story of the Churban is because the Jewish people had too much pride in what they thought they held in terms of their relationship to God, they left with shame. The vision for a Beit Midrash is to be exactly the reverse. It's okay to be nervous coming in, David, to your talk. It's okay to be nervous inside a Beit Midrash. I think all of the faculty here are always more nervous than it appears. I think we're nervous when we encounter rabbis to know that whether we get it right or whether we get it wrong, there may be some rabbis going out and sharing it with the world as actual Torah. And if we're wrong, that's dangerous. Ownership and knowledge mean responsibility, but they also mean the possibility of being wrong. I hope that you take some of this with you, however, a sense that by being in this Beit Midrash, you became owners of it. That when you left it, it wasn't that you handed the keys to somebody else. I assume that the Beit Midrash does periodically get locked, but I don't know that this is a place in which we ever hand over our keys to somebody else. I hope that you leave this Beit Midrash feeling that sense of what Nechemia ben Akana says of gratitude for your chelek, gratitude for the portion that you had taken with you, and that you remember always that this place will be open for you when you get back. Thank you. Concert.
Mazel tov to the 27 new Senior Hartman Rabbinic Fellows. We celebrate with them now in the courtyard with Hanan Ben Ari. Mazel tov.